Pride will be the downfall of mankind, especially for business guys.
I decided to move out to LA to become an actor, and it turned out that I was a really good waiter.
My brand has always been like the fountain to life to everything I've created. History of alcoholism in my family, that sat with me for so long. And then I finally had this revelation.
So I went back for like 10 minutes, and I came back with a new script, and all I did was I added a dog in the beach scene, and this dog was wearing an $18 lobster costume. And the client was like, love it, let's do it.
And I just pray that there is fertile soil. There are listeners, men and women, that are hungry for God's presence in their life, that are hungry and ready to receive good seed. I pray that that seed is planted, that it flourishes, and that it grows in their life. Holy Spirit, give me wisdom today to ask the right questions, to lead the conversation, to pull the gold out of Bill. I pray for a spirit of courage, a spirit of boldness on this podcast, that we cannot be bound by the limitations of the world, or pride, or ego, or shame, or guilt, that we can speak freely here, that we can just have a conversation, and through that conversation, people can be unlocked. Even we can be unlocked from this conversation today. God, I pray that this podcast honors you, it exalts you, that people come to these podcasts hungry to succeed in their life, but what they get is so much more. They get a father that's always loved them. They get a son that died for them, and they get a Holy Spirit that's always here to help them. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, this episode is brought to you by 7 Peaks, a free faith-based personal development community. If you're interested in joining, head over to 7 Peaks of Influence.com. All right, guys, I got a powerful episode, and I'll tell you how I know. Because the way that this came to be all started with an Instagram direct message. Bill Wanek, that's with me here today, he recently just launched a podcast of his own, and he was reaching out to me, and the podcast is the Power of Prayer podcast. I love that. Bill goes to one of our campuses here in San Diego, a different campus than me, but we have the same community. And he wanted to have me on his podcast, and I was like, I want to have you on my podcast. So we're doing that today, guys. And Bill, we're still getting to know one another, but I can already feel when you walked in the room God's presence on your life. I'm so excited for this episode. The guy's probably an OG in marketing, could probably teach a young buck like me a thing or two. I could probably teach you a thing or two too.
100%.
That's new age stuff. He's a recovering alcoholic. I love what he's doing in recovery, now called Restore, and helping people set free of that. And we're going to dive into that. He's married and a father of 3. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. It's an honor.
It's an honor to have you here, man. You made this happen.
Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer in just when the Holy Spirit hits you to reach out to somebody, there's no harm in it. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
You know, you don't write back, and I don't lose any sleep. We're not thinking about each other, but like I'm a firm believer in that. Just reach out, see what happens. And and you wrote back right away.
Come on, man. Yeah, I did. I was excited.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm in this season of my life too, and we're very much in a Holy Spirit-filled community.
Mm-hmm. You have that, it's kind of like that yes and mentality that they talk about in improv, to where you when you contact somebody, a lot of people might say yes, but then there's just, that's it. It dies flat. But you're like, yes, and when should we do it? And I'm kind of that same way too. So right away I got excited. I'm like,
and if I don't do that, it probably won't happen.
100%, right?
You know, it's like someone asking you to pray for them. I now, like my rule of thumb is I'm praying for you right now.
Yeah.
If you tell me to pray for you and I'm like, yeah, man, I'll pray for you on that, I probably won't if I don't do it right now.
Yeah.
I love the idea that people build prayer lists and they're great. Not me. You tell me, Bill, that you're believing for this in your life. I will be driving down the road with my wife and I will be like, babe, we got to pray for Bill right now.
100%.
I will pray for the next minute for you. And I don't have to carry the weight of that anymore. And I've just released and interceded and stand in agreement for it.
Well, yeah, because so many times like you could miss, like moments come up and you can miss it. I remember my first emerge, like I was gonna pray on this guy that I'd gotten to know really well.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to do it right then because there were people around. I was just learning how to pray.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll get my chance. And then all of a sudden it gets to be that chance, and he's not there. He had to leave early.
Wow.
And it like ripped out my heart, just because I really wanted to pray on this guy's daughter. And I was like, oh, if I see this guy again, I'm gonna get him, right? And the next day we went to church, and everybody kind of sits with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting right next to this guy. He's a big old like Marine. And I'm like, as soon as this as soon as the altar call's over, I'm praying. Gets over, I stand up, and boom, he hits me first. And he's like, dude, I was going to pray on you. And I missed my chance, and I'm so mad. And he got me first, and I was like blown away, right? And then I prayed on him, and to this day, like, we're just great friends. And like, that's when you never miss a chance to pray on someone.
No, never miss a chance to pray. That's a great way to open the episode.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this, Bill. We're going to let the Holy Spirit lead the conversation today.
100%.
Guys, hope you are ready. I like to ask, though, people that come on the podcast what they value most in life. And I'd love to kind of give you that question just to kind of open up and set a tone of the atmosphere. At this point in your life, where you're at right now, what do you value most?
It's got to be time with my kids. Spending time with my children is the closest thing on this earth that I could compare to spending time with God.
Wow.
Like, there's nothing else that gives that much joy. It's just, there's, the way that your kids look at you, the way that your kids ask for help. There's just like a certain way. My daughter can't even say it. She goes, help. She doesn't have the H, but you would instantly do anything for them, And I always tell people that are struggling with anything or feeling shame or guilt that if you have kids, remember the way that you looked at them when you first had them. Everybody remembers that face that you gave them.
Yeah.
That's the way that God looks at you always. So God's never not looked at you like that. Even when you think and feel shame, he's still looking at you with that same look of just utter love. So yeah, man, kids, it's just, they can't fill the bank account, but they can fill your heart in a way that money could never occupy.
And I love how you tied to like our relationship with the Father and the way that he sees us, that you almost see a reflection of that through your children. So I don't have kids yet. I'm so excited for that moment, right? But I grew up without my dad. My dad was in prison, and I had to learn to see God as a loving Father despite never having a loving father in the natural world. And I'm excited for the day I get to be a loving father to my kid.
Because that's going to make you're going to be such a good dad because of that.
Yeah.
Because, like, on one end you could say, yeah, you didn't have a dad, right? But you found your father, and you use that dad as a role model. And look at the role model that you have to put upon your kids.
Yeah. It's best role model.
So it's almost like there's no generational curse to break there.
Yeah.
Because you're so connected with your Heavenly Father.
Come on. So I love that. So you value most spending time with your kids, and to spend time with children is not as easy as we'd like it to be, even though it should be, right? We have responsibilities. You're also the man and the head of the household and the family, meaning you provide for your family, you cover your family, you have to lead your family, which means you also got to go out and go to war. You also got to fight battles. You also got to take territory. You also have to structure things and build things in a way that allow you the time freedom to do that. I feel like the beginning of this, I'd love to spend some time on that. And then we're going to move into some other really deep stuff after that. Tell people a little bit more about what you do through your marketing company, and kind of shift it in a way of how are you using the marketplace to get you more time with your children, or maybe on the journey to do that.
That's a great question, or it's a great topic. So I'm an advertising guy, kind of classic. I was a copywriter, and now became like an executive creative director. So, I'm an ideas guy. I concept ideas, I write them, and I coach my teams how to bring their ideas to the full greatness of what they have, right? So it's traditional advertising, TV commercials, billboards, radio, print, and digital website, and then social is now more important than anything. 90% of what I do we start with social, to where that used to be the thing that the digital team played with, but the world has turned.
Yeah, you guys really know. We're going to work on the big boy stuff. You guys do the social, and it's flip-flopped.
Yeah, 100%. The big boy stuff is the social. Like, the big ideas go into that first. Like, how does it work best in a social platform instead of how does it work best on a 60-second Super Bowl ad? Like, that used to be the golden crown, was to have a Super Bowl ad, but now it's not that important because it's not making your client money. That's why most of it's just brands that don't need people.
Did you see Kanye's that he did this last Super Bowl and how much money he made off that? I shot it like in his car or something.
Yeah.
That was just insane.
Yeah. But that's all he just did the ad spend and shot it in his car. He didn't have to spend $12 million on flying
production.
Plane. Yeah. But so I do that, and I craft that, but all that's changing so much now, and it's actually helping me spend time with my family, because we used to just have these big giant agencies, right? And if you're a brand and you'd sign on with me and you'd meet me on the day that we signed the contract, and and then you'd never see me again. And some intern would be writing all your stuff. And there's big agencies have just become these big bloated things that you spend a lot of money on. So there are groups of us that are seasoned big agency guys that are starting small agencies, under 10 people, because you can get our creative power, but without the 30 to 100 people in between. So you can afford it to get really, really good work, right? So that means now I work at home. My team's around the world, so I have 12 people. I work at home, and we have to adjust to everything that's going on. Like one of those things that we do now is you have to think about, like, you're in marketing, right? You deal in social media, like, and it's impossible to get a job right now for marketing guys. It's impossible. There was a job app that went out. A friend of mine put for a copywriter. 24 hours, she got 2,300 applications. How do you break through that, right? You can't just do job applications like everyone else. Where's everybody at? They're in their social media.
Yeah.
So what I started doing to get hired, and I recommend to people, and it works, go and create an Instagram profile that is your portfolio.
Yeah. Show people.
Show people. Make your feed your portfolio. Use your tabs on your stories to be like, oh, here's his television. Here's his print. And then when you see the job applications, look up on LinkedIn who's running it, find them on Instagram, and friend them with that portfolio. Why? The insight is no matter if you accept or don't accept a request, what do you do at least? You look at who the heck it is.
Yeah, you're going to check them out.
So somebody's at least
and
seeing
you can
work.
DM them too. That's a whole thing we built out was a whole DM marketing outbound. We crushed. That's been our thing for like the last year and a half.
Really?
Crushed.
Yeah, it's true because literally, and then I'll send them a DM that's personalized.
Yeah.
Bro, I went from 100 applications a week for 6 months with maybe 1% even replying to the first 6 out that I sent, 5 replied.
Yeah. And you're so smart. You're also omnipresent, multi-channel marketing them by sending the friend request on LinkedIn, having the portfolio plus a job application. The brain also notices, wait, I recognize that name. If they saw you, if you also like some of their posts, if you're really smart, nurture them. Yeah. Go engage with them on LinkedIn for 2 weeks and then throw that job app in. And they're like, wait, is this that guy from LinkedIn? I just want to talk to him.
Yeah.
And then you're like at top of the list.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's actually the Holy Spirit that hit me with that. Because when I got my first job back when I was an intern 16 years ago, that's how I did it. But it was with Facebook.
Really?
I found all the guys that ran the 10 biggest agencies in Chicago, and I made up I put my name and put it on there and just friend requested them. And someone saw it and was like, that's smart. So the Holy Spirit was like, that wasn't broken. Why are you fixing it?
Yeah. So you went back to those, call them OG tactics, what you used in the past, and now you're finding ways to use them now.
Yeah.
Because the market's gotten so competitive. And your world, it's interesting too, because advertising and marketing as a career choice is pretty big, market share. But the social media world opened up to where anyone could become a marketer. And that's shifted how has that affected your climate, dude? Like,
It's a twofold because there's both ends of that sword aren't dangerous because, first of all, I'll talk it from the perspective if you're starting a brand. There's never been a time in history where if a regular human being, anybody wants to start a brand, it is the best time to do that.
Right now.
There's more accessible to you than ever before. Thanks to AI, right? You can write, you can art direct, you can make websites. There's all these different platforms you can use. It's so accessible. So now, like, if you have that dream to be a brand, do it, right? On the flip side, for us guys, thanks to all that stuff and kind of the economy, like, because advertising gets cut first, it's harder than ever to get a job in advertising. Because the minute the AI started, it erased the junior copywriter position.
yeah, it did.
Why would you want to pay someone $40,000 when you can spend 29? So now, if you're going into advertising, you have to be really smart with the concepts. Ideas still win. At the end of the day, ideas are still going to
and
win.
just because there's Chat GPT and the new one that just came out and all of that, which is brilliant. It's an amazing tool. It means nothing without big ideas and vision.
Yeah.
And the ability to put the ideas together to produce bottom line.
Yeah.
Which is what a company really cares about.
Yeah. And we can start as humans, we can start with a blank page and create to where you can't start with a blank prompt.
No.
There's nothing you can just push
And
enter
prompt
on.
engineering is becoming an art form now of copywriting.
100%.
Yeah.
So there are jobs coming in. It's just we're in that place where there's not a bunch of them. So there's still
But if you don't understand good marketing anyways, I don't care how much chat GPT you got, it don't mean nothing if you don't know
Yeah.
how to use it.
Yeah. Well, you got to be willing to pivot too. You got to learn. Like there are guys that were my mentors and running billion-dollar agencies 16 years ago that are like driving Ubers now. I have one of my mentors is driving an Uber, and this guy
Dang.
was like he had Tom Cruise on speed dial. Like he was living the best advertising life, but they didn't accept it when it started coming in. They didn't want to pivot.
They didn't evolve their business.
Yeah.
So I used to run an event in San Diego called Evolve. I did Evolve Your Brand or Go Extinct. Then I did Evolve Your Business or Go Extinct. And I ran like live events, and I was like screaming from the rooftops at business owners, if you do not evolve your business, you will go extinct.
100%.
And it happened. So many. And the ones that did, they're making a lot of money. They're figuring it out.
Right.
They're persevering through the hard economic condition. The guys that are like, no, I'm not interested, are struggling.
And isn't it crazy how at the end of the day, you can be the best business mind in the world, but your ego can take you down.
Yeah, it's biblical.
Yeah.
Pride.
Yeah.
Pride will be the downfall of mankind,
Yeah.
especially for business guys. Okay, so you advertising 16 years. Things have shifted with the landscape, very competitive. So you started using LinkedIn. You started reaching out. How have you been pivoting beyond that, even with your business? What have you had to do to keep your business growing and alive through this?
Well, I'm a big fan of looking back at what's worked in other places. Just because it was 20 years ago doesn't mean it wasn't effective. Maybe it's just not upgraded.
Yeah.
So I started looking back at like the biggest game changers in the different industries in the last 20 years, and I would hit on T-Mobile. Okay, so what was the problem there? Like there were contracts for everything and this and that, and they came out, no contracts, no overages. It's as simple as that, and you get the same quality. So let's do that with an agency. So now I shifted the whole agency.
Wow. So
and
you
it's-
went out with a model of no long-term contract.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's launching next week.
Let's go.
It's all of it. We redid everything. There's 3 subscriptions, right? So now if you're rebranding, you can pick one of these 3, get us for the month. You love us, keep going. If not, you're done.
Yeah.
No, and there's no overages. We'll work till we're happy. You're happy in that month. It's totally the opposite of what goes on now. And so we're going to come out in like a T-Mobile fashion and just go at it. Like because you see the work that we can do, but look, click and you get it for that month. If you want to keep going, keep going.
In each package, what you'll be willing to do for them is different based on the
Yeah.
package tier that they're in.
Yeah. Cause we're looking at mid-sized companies, right?
Right.
So it goes like $8,000, 14, and then like a customized.
Right. Like more enterprise type,
Yeah.
custom fit to you.
Yeah, but for those mid-sized companies, that's a great option because you don't have to because it takes months to get going. There's so much HR.
And they're getting a 10-person marketing team for $14,000. When if they had to staff that, especially in California,
Yeah,
that's steep. So if they cut a lot of their advertising team and they can bring in a third-party team at a fraction of the cost and no long-term contract commitment, that's a great offer.
yeah. So we're gonna roll it. But I feel really, when you just get in your, something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna disrupt,
Yeah,
and disruption is good.
it
right?
is. It's needed. Mm-hmm. Just be ready. Others will do the same thing. So you got to be a front runner.
That's what we're doing. So we're
Yeah.
rolling out hot with it, and we're gonna start our, shooting our commercials for that, and we're gonna do a total social media launch.
Come on.
Like that's the way it is now, right? That's where we start our thinking. That's how you
Organic
launch.
and paid?
What's that?
Organic and paid social?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's interesting. Like, I think if you want to win now, and I can't believe I'm kind of saying that everything's shifting, but I've been an organic guy, so I didn't do paid ads. I built multiple companies and never was like multi-million-dollar companies, but we did well. All off of organic. My brand has always been like the fountain to life to everything I've created. I think now you got to do paid and organic. It's getting harder and harder to just build business off organic brand. It's doable. It is you can make $100,000 a year doing it for sure. But if you want to really go big, it's getting hard. But if you have paid advertising combined with good organic, I think anyone can come in the game if they have a good offer and they know how to do those 2 things and crush it right now.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, we have whole teams the last company that I was a executive creative director at, we had a whole team that was just our paid organic research. And it's just insane. That's a whole art because you're targeting the right people. It's not as easy as it was 2 years ago. Like last election, you could click on Republicans. Now that doesn't exist.
Dude,
you gotta be like,
do you notice how they got rid of the red background on Facebook? You can like, if you have less than a certain amount of like characters, you can put the background behind a Facebook post. I don't know if you noticed this. This happened in 2020 or whatever. Whenever Trump and Biden were running, Facebook removed the red background. They only had blue on there.
No kidding.
Little things I noticed. There was no, and I think I saw someone recently have one, so maybe they brought it back. But for years, there was no red background, which is actually one of the best pattern disrupting colors for marketing to get someone to look at, especially if you're doing like a hand raiser post. So I always wanted to use it for that reason, just because I know red gets people to stop.
Yeah.
And Facebook took it away. I don't want to go too down that rabbit hole, but there's a lot of things.
But it's true. It's a real deal, and they went as far as a perfect example of that. This client that we have is called Republican Red Wine.
Yeah.
So last election, they were crushing it, dude. It was just a homemade website, and I think the label had like an elephant with the Trump hair on it.
Yeah.
And this guy pulled in like over $1 million in 3 months.
Easy, because it was hot.
The day after the election, Facebook shut them down because they considered them political.
Really?
So he couldn't even advertise for like over a year. Just because they said it was a political, anything remotely Republican, they just literally day after the election.
Well, we're also now playing in the playground in the ecosystem of mega tech companies that run the billboard space.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, and you have to learn how to play by their rules. You can try to argue with them all day; it don't matter. They'll shut your ad account down.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's, if you do smart social, and you think, it's overused, but like, authenticity brings authority.
Always.
Right? So,
and cuts through the noise.
Yeah. So lean in what you're good at. It's like if you have a problem with alcohol and you sit down and ask me a question about it, you're going to pay attention to what I say, right?
Always.
But if you're to ask some 7-year-old and they start giving you advice, there's no authenticity to it, right? So you got to lead with what you're really about first. And that's the way to do it. And I developed a system to kind of uncover that stuff, and it's really easy, dude. It's like, can I tell you what it is?
Yeah, dude,
it's
share it. I want to hear
simple.
it, bro. That's why we're here.
I discovered this when I was in.
Don't hold back on us, Bill.
Yeah, I'm gonna let it out. I discovered this in ad school. So my ad school was like a 1-year program, and all the other ones are 2. So it's kind of condensed, and you sign up, and it's like you have to sacrifice this year of your life. And I was like, absolutely, to become good at this, I will. So I hunkered down at this little school in Chicago, and it would just sit in their library, and I would read. And I came across this book about writer's block. And there's this trick that they used to do for writers called free writing to cure writer's block. And what this is you sit down and you pick a subject and you set a timer and you just start writing everything that comes out of your head. Use a pencil or a pen, don't type. For 5 minutes, you write everything that comes to your head. It doesn't have to be complete sentences. Don't worry about punctuation, misspelling. Just don't cross anything out. Go and go and go, go and go and go, and it frees you up. So I started doing this for the brands I would work on.
Wow.
Okay, and so I would write the question, what do I think of this brand? And I would answer it beforehand myself, like, well, I think this brand's cool, and they stand for athletes. So then I'd do the exercise, I'd do the writing, just everything. And after I was done, I'd go back through and I'd circle words that repeated themselves. And all of a sudden I was like, oh no, I like them because they're like courageous and they include everyone. And I was seeing things that I psychologically liked about them, but my quick thinking brain wouldn't recognize.
Wow.
So now when I take a brand, I have like 3 questions I ask them to write on. And one of them's like, let's say you have a beer company. So imagine you're standing or any company, imagine you're standing at a bar and you're waiting to order a drink. And there's 2 guys next to you and you overhear them talking about your business or your brand. What would you want to hear them say? And you just ramble on that for 5 minutes. And then you go back and you look for words that repeat themselves. And you find like the core 5 or 6 things that you truly, authentically want them to feel.
Yeah.
So then you put those as pillars.
Wow.
And you go.
And you build a brand off of those pillars.
And you build a brand.
And it's almost like you did a subconscious exercise, because the conscious mind sometimes can, you have this supercomputer in the background running.
Yeah.
And then you have this conscious like will.
Yeah.
And it's like you allowed the subconscious to have a moment to like dump.
Yeah.
And then like pulled out of the subconscious thought like,
Yeah.
oh, well, it's actually deeper than what the conscious cut off the subconscious and said.
100%.
That's crazy.
And it's funny. It'll like blow your mind when you do it. You're like, everyone that I've had to do that for, I mean, there's guys that have had businesses for 10 years and they know what their business is about and they've done that and they were like, holy crap.
Yeah.
It's about this and it's right. So it's a great exercise to do.
I love creative brains, man. I love the way that creatives think and operate and outside the box and how to do that. That's amazing. What made you want to get into advertising and being a creative? Like, why this?
Well, after college, I decided to move out to LA to become an actor. And it turned out that I was a really good waiter.
I think most actors would say the same thing.
So good at waiting tables. So I was out there for like 7 years, you know, and it's a great story. My buddy Lige and I would enter all these contests where you make your own commercial. And we do it because we would act in them and we wanted to be discovered and all that jazz. So like, you know how Doritos does that, make your own commercial thing for the Super Bowl. So we would do those. He was like, all right, so he's like, Bill, you write them. And he's going to act as the producer and go find a guy with a camera and a mic and some lights and all that jazz.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so I'll write the commercials. And I realized in writing them that I liked writing these little like 30-second snippets of time. I was like, this is really, really fun. Like I just stumbled upon this really great creative thing that I was loving. And then I looked into it and I was like, you can make money doing this in advertising.
Wow.
So we both found our passions. I went back to Chicago and went to advertising school. And then he went and became a producer.
Wow.
And then a director. And he actually just directed his third film, Sweet Dreams, when there's like Johnny Knoxville's in it. And
Oh, dang.
just so we both found our passions doing something else, right? But we listened to our, you know, what I know now is the Holy Spirit, but listened to our guts and went. So, yeah, I went to ad school, hammered down, and there you have it. But it all started in LA acting.
That's cool. So came out here to be an actor. Out of that, found out you were really good at advertising, writing that, and then went into that. Went to Chicago, got in school. Now you've been in this for 16 years. Mm-hmm. So you've been doing that. Now has it always been your own business? Did you work in other companies? What did the journey look like?
I was always in big agencies.
Okay, so you always went and worked for bigger agencies.
Yeah. So in Chicago and New York are like your hubs. So I was in like the big five.
What's
in
that
Chicago.
movie or the show that's like Mad Men or
Mad Men.
yeah, that's all about like advertising world.
Yeah, Mad Men. It's funny because Mad Men is based out of a Chicago agency.
Yeah.
Literally the show. It's in New York in the show, but in real life. Yeah, and then their main guy Don Draper is based on a real guy. So it's you know, back then it was a lot more drinking and all that stuff, but it's amazing. Like the big advertising agency life, it was heaven, bro. Like you'd go in and you get an assignment and you come up with the idea and you'd write it, and then once you sell it, you're whisked away on a plane for the whole production. So
really,
advertising's fun because you're there for the whole thing. It's not just the baby.
So like if your idea gets picked up for the
Yeah.
company and you sell them on that, then you get to go be through start to finish.
Yeah,
Like,
so when it sells through, like you look at all three directors, you pick the director, and then you and the director cast it, and then you're out there in production. And it was always nice as the writer. I was always right next to the director, and you know, so you're there, and then after you shoot it, you're there for all the editing, and then you're there for the color correction, and then the writer always directs all the voiceover and sound, and so it's a
Wow.
beautiful kind of experience. But that you know, that started changing about 5 years ago.
I was
because,
gonna ask, when did you start seeing the shift?
like 5 years ago.
Okay, so that's like 2019.
Yeah. So everything was, there were less shoots, and all of a sudden there was no more, because you used to be us traditional guys, and then there was like the digital team, right? And that has dissolved. That became one thing.
Okay,
Because
they
digital-
had to merge
Yeah, 'cause
all of
digital is
advertising
first.
because
That's-
digital now took first.
Yeah.
So TV commercials were probably like the big deal then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd say that's probably the biggest like production. What is it now?
The biggest production?
Well, I guess that's still probably the most production is to make a TV commercial, but like what's the biggest form of media that you're seeing companies move to right now?
It's all about brand activation. It's all about how do we use everything at once.
Okay, so it's collectively getting all the parts to work together.
And it's almost like you can take out TV. It's how do we do online content, social activations in real life, experiential stuff. You know, you have to get out there in the world and interact with people because that creates a lot of the content that you see. You know, so yeah, TV's almost not even in a lot of the picture. It's
And it's a high cost.
unbelievably.
And it's shifted. What really interesting though, TV was so big like when I was a kid. And I think I stopped watching TV for many years. And now you have streaming platforms, you have Netflix, Disney, Hulu, like all these different ones. Advertising's made its way because Netflix started, there was no ads. Now ads are starting to come to those platforms.
Yeah.
Do you see TV commercials coming back again through streaming? Because it's starting to, you're seeing more. I mean, Disney lost so much money with Disney Plus. They had to do it. They kind of pushed and made all the streaming platforms do it because they're trying to save all those losses.
Yeah, I think what they put more of into as far as streaming services now, because you skip so fast. Except for the few platforms that make you watch.
They make you watch it, yeah.
Right? But they skip so fast that they're putting more money now into the pause screens. You know, when you pause it and it comes up an ad, just kind of still frame ad comes up.
Yeah.
Like that's where a lot of engagement is. Yeah. Like, and that's cool because for me, that's kind of like old school print advertising.
Right.
Right. So you're just basically thinking of a print ad that's more horizontal. So it's kind of fun, right? Because the thing that's so great about print ads is that you have one picture and one little sentence and one image to capture someone's attention, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's not something that's going to happen next. So that headline as a writer has to be just dope. You know,
I just don't know why more people aren't using QR codes to really highly optimize funnels. They're starting to. Saw it in Super Bowl this year. That was cool.
Yeah,
But I just don't know why more people aren't.
I don't either. I mean, I would put them.
I don't know why. I don't
everywhere.
know how advertising's done so well. I guess these companies are so big and big brands without having solid call to actions in places to generate the leads. I mean, I guess Coca-Cola just wants you to always think of Coca-Cola. So when you go in a store, you buy Coca-Cola. I understand that. But a lot of other companies, like a clear CTA, maybe it's because I've been in the smaller companies in marketing world, that's always been the key for us. Like, how do we get the attention and get them to do what we want them to do and go where we want them to go and take them through a journey to buy what we want them to buy?
Yeah. Well, there's this. That's a huge problem. It's the first thing that we see when we look at websites. It's like where you have all this beautiful graphics and all these snazzy words, but where's the CTA? And problem number two is you have to tell us who we're talking to right away.
Yeah.
You know, you could have the coolest service ever, but is it geared towards?
It's almost like who, why, and what. It's almost the order, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's so simple. I don't know why people try to break it with just flashy websites that move around and swirl. Like no one cares. It's like if I need a service or something and I don't get what you're doing, because we see through the tracking is that most of the time people don't go below the second module.
Yeah.
Right. So your big one, and then your explainer, and people don't go past that because we see through the tracking. So that's why you got to move it up there. And nobody is clever enough to temper someone in desperation that's looking for something now, you know?
Yeah.
You've got to let them know what you're offering and show them how to get it immediately.
But this whole online digital marketing world, right? You've had this digital marketing revolution, the Russell Brunsons of the world, Dan Kennedy before that, Hermosi now, but this whole movement, funnels. I feel like people have gotten really good at understanding how to get someone to buy something on a website. Like it's like to a science. If I guess why there's still this bridge still happening. I see you have like I was in the coaching world, marketing world, all that. So you have all of us who go out there and learn how to like build really kick butt webinars and funnels and make a lot of money. You have these companies that have hundreds of millions of dollars who for some reason haven't started to use those strategies yet. But what happens when they do? I'm just curious, like, do you see that gap there? Are companies on that level starting to do it? Do you think there's an opportunity for businesses like you to start bringing that to them?
They're not doing it. Like, I don't see it.
I don't see like a really kick butt click funnel for a Fortune 500 company.
Well, I think that's because they have so many departments that no one's working cohesively.
No. And they're so big maybe, and they have so much money that like they're already selling enough of their product or service that they're not desperate to create an optimized funnel to increase conversions.
Well, and people are strategizing themselves out of business. You know, instead of, again, using a proven method that works. From the last agency that I was at, we had 7 strategists, and they would sit there. We'd have these meetings, and no one would really land on anything. They would just talk in circles for hours. But we prided ourselves on all these strategists, but we had no we had no way of getting to the customer, right? We just relied on the fact that we were a part of the Atlantic, and we had a lot of strategists, and the company dissolved.
Well,
It literally just dissolved because they strategized themselves out of a business.
yeah.
Because there was no operations in place to get the humans that you needed.
Dang. Yeah, that's crazy. Advertising's such an industry. It's going to always be evolving too. It's one industry that will always change because how you reach people, how you get people's attention. I'm curious, do you feel like in 16 years of marketing and advertising that we find things that work and we use them until they don't, and then we go find something else that works?
Yes. But I feel yes, and I feel like we do that by sacrificing the actual like big creative side of stuff. You know, like if we would stop and think about, for instance, you can change the smallest thing can change a multi-million-dollar project, right?
Right.
But we overthink everything. I have an example of this shoot that we just did for 5 alcohol brands. Yeah,
Okay.
It's not out yet, so I'll give you the vague scenario. It was for 5 alcohol brand collaboration, right? Big deal. 5 locations, 5-day shoot. It's a big deal. One of the brands was a New England brand, like the booze is more like a Boston-ish kind of vibe, right? New England kind of beach. And the entire shoot, the only way it could work was if it was in San Diego. But the client was like, the beaches out here don't look like New England. They don't look like East Coast beaches. There's no way. I'm going to move this shoot over there. Let's shut it down. Like, I'm pulling out of this, and that would have just flattened out everything. So I was like, all right, give me one script revision on this. And so I went back for like 10 minutes, and I came back with a new script, and all I did was I added a dog in the beach scene, and this dog was wearing an $18 lobster costume. And the client was like, love it. Let's do it. Where do I sign? Let's go. So an $18 costume just saved a $5 million shoot.
Right.
Because somebody was willing to think about something a little bit more and creatively. And I think you can revisit old ideas. Like we can revisit some of these
Yeah.
old things that worked. Like you can. Like it's been 30 some years, but if it's a near tactic,
And there's a reason it worked before.
yeah.
And humans haven't changed as much as we think we have.
No.
Just the marketing landscape. Actually, the fundamental you use then might work even better now because not as many people are thinking about what used to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you go back to Real Men of Genius, I don't know if you remember that campaign. The Real Men of Genius was Bud Light's. It's arguably, if you go in the history books, one of the best ad campaigns ever. It was like Real Men of Genius, and they'd have all these. Each commercial would be this certain guy that's just ultra cool, like the coolest of the cool. And it's like, here's to you, mullet guy who doesn't care in the parking. Like it was like that.
Yeah.
Well, you fast forward 10 years, that's what the most interesting man in the world was. But it was just they made it one guy and they said a bunch of his attributes, you know, and no one would ever unless you're me, see that they're so the same. But it's okay.
Yeah.
Right? They used inspiration from that. You can reuse things. Like I feel like people are running out of ideas, so they're giving up, you know. But advertising is changing so much that it's never going to be the same. So however back you go to find ideas, you got to see if they work with the environment that we're in.
Yeah. That's so good, man.
Yeah.
We're going to move in another direction. The only last thing I'll say to button up this, because it's been great. I love talking marketing. I didn't even know you were that deep into this. It's been fun. As someone that's listening to the podcast right now, maybe they're a marketer, they want to get into it. They're not very successful. What advice would you give someone wanting to get into this industry?
I would learn the stuff that you don't want to learn first. Start with funnels, start with everything. And I call that like the logistical stuff. Like, it's cool to want to start and think about, you know, a seagull you have a mascot that's a seagull and he's got Steven Seagal's voice and it's Steven Seagal and it's fun to think of ideas like that, right? But that is only going to get you anywhere if you get in front of the right people who remember who Steven Seagal is and can act on that, right? So start by learning what is a funnel? How do I operate funnels? Can I learn this on my own or should I hire someone to help me?
Yeah.
You have to know all the steps that you need to learn to launch your business. And you have to decide what you're willing to learn on your own. And then you have to know that you can always find someone to help you. Because if you try to do everything on your own, you don't have enough time It's going to stress you out.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to know your limits. There's always someone out there to help you.
Yeah, and
Like
you
we
can even
said,
get paid to learn. Go be intern for someone. Go work
100%.
for them. Go work at a lower cost and learn marketing from someone that's better at marketing.
Yeah, and it's learn what the nails are before you build the house.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I know you have a heart and a passion for recovery, especially for men. You said you are a recovered alcoholic yourself. And, one thing we've been talking about, and I want to create space for that. What does recovery actually mean to you?
Recovery for me is, it's why I'm alive. But recovery for me was only made possible through my faith. Because I really, really tried hard to beat it on my own. Like I tried everything. I'm one of these guys, I'm very all in. So once I realized that my drinking had gone past the point where I couldn't stop. Like I'm one of those guys to where I didn't decide because I think I drink too much. My brain physically is to where I can't stop. If I have one, there's a route that when you have a drink that when it hits your brain, there's a whole route it takes to where it feels good. When you become an alcoholic, it just becomes a straight line. So you feel really good really fast, but it goes away really fast and you need to keep drinking. And that's how alcoholism works to like full blown alcoholics. So it's the first drink that actually kind of kills you, because then you can't stop. There's an old phrase that says they say it's not the caboose that kills you, it's that first drink.
Yeah.
And once I realized I was to that point, I was like, all right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move back to Chicago. I'm gonna beat the crap out of this because Chicago has more bars per capita than any city in the country, but it also has more AA meetings. So I'd be hitting like 2-3 a day, bro. Like I was going all in, man, around my advertising schedule. Just boom, boom, boom. And what was happening is when they call it a relapse, when you go back and drink, my relapses were getting closer and closer. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like I'm trying 3 times as hard, but I'm getting worse. And the drinking was getting worse to where every time I would start, it would always end in the hospital. Like it was really, really bad.
Wow.
I had doctors tell me that like your tolerance is too high now. You're going to drink yourself to death. And it didn't matter because it's a disease, dude. And it's a sin of the flesh. So you can't just go and get delivered from it. If that would be awesome if you could, right? Because then there are a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous that could have other jobs, right? But so I was just trying so hard, and then I had nothing. I got engaged while I was trying to fight this to a girl that lived in San Diego.
Wow.
My now wife. And she was like, listen, dude, you always talk about this church you used to go to out here, and which is our church, Awaken. Oh, you're always talking about it. If you want to marry me, here's what you need to do. You need to sell everything right now, get on a plane, and get out here. And she's like, that's it. And I was like, oh, all right. So I literally I went and I just had like a studio, so it wasn't that much stuff. It wasn't like an estate I was selling.
Yeah.
But I got rid of everything, and I had 2 suitcases. And one of them was my stuff I like to wear, and one was a bunch of just clothes that didn't fit that I was going to donate on the way to the airport. So that's what I did. I donated the stuff on the way to the airport. I got to O'Hare Airport in Chicago, and I realized that I donated the wrong suitcase. And so I was like, wow, I really do have nothing now. Just got a bunch of clothes that don't fit me. So I showed up in San Diego on a Saturday night. Sunday morning, we went to Balboa. I did an altar call, and lifted, dude.
Wow.
The moment to moment, whatever spirit was in me that was holding on to the every second torment was lifted. It was gone. Immediately. It was a miracle, and it was so strange. I used to not like to talk about it because people really, really struggle still every second of every day. So I was kind of almost embarrassed. And my pastor, Mike Yeager, I told him that story once, and he goes, you know what? You're an idiot. I was like, what? He's like, you need to be telling everyone that story. They have to know from a human being that they see that miracles like that can happen.
Yeah.
And since then, we started the recovery program, and we do that because it still takes maintenance because it's a sin of the flesh, right? So you got to keep pushing it off. But it's, when I think about how I tried so hard to fix it, think about Adam and Eve, dude. Because what did they do? Because I just learned this about fig leaves, and I just love this. So Adam and Eve, when they ate from the fruit or ate from the tree, what'd they do? They got afraid, and they tried to fix it. They went and they grabbed some fig leaves, and they covered themselves up.
They were ashamed.
Yeah, fig leaves on one side are like a purplish color, they're very smooth, but on the other side they're almost white, and they have little bitty hooks on them, and they're poisonous. It's like poison ivy. It's a defense thing. So on one side it's beautiful, and the other side is like basically poison ivy. So when they tried to fix it, they grabbed a bunch of poison ivy and put it on their private parts. Not the best idea, right? And that's a great example of us trying to fix things really, really hard, but actually making it worse. But when you let God in, what did he do? He came in. What are you guys doing? Let me kill this animal and give you some nice fur, something that will actually keep you warm, that's actually nice. And so that's where my recovery worked, is when I invited in God. Because since that moment I brought him in, he lifted that and now has enabled me to help people every week, dude.
Come on.
Every week. And it's crazy because they get better, and they hear your story, and they hear similarities. That's why these meetings exist. The meetings exist, and there's an old story that says when you go to a meeting, you hear the same story over and over, and that's a blessing, because you might be out there thinking, no one's as bad as me. No one's ever done anything like this. Nobody. And you drag your butt in there, and you sit down, and you hear someone saying that thing that you did, and you feel, and the shame lifts a little bit.
Yeah.
And hope starts a little bit.
Come on.
And then you're like, let's do this. It's just a great
And
thing.
what has shifted in your life since you brought God in and you've walked through this recovery journey? Like, what are some of the blessings that have come on the other side?
Marriage, 2 kids.
Come on.
I have 2 under 2.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's just amazing that they wouldn't. My wife says it all the time. I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't have made it this long on my own, because it was getting worse. But 2 kids, my wife, we help lead the recovery program.
So now you're helping others get free of the thing that you got free from.
Yeah. My podcast, which is all about teaching people how to pray, which we connect in with recovery a lot.
Come on.
My businesses, everything that I have. I often think I'm a big early morning guy. I get up to pray really early, and then I go play basketball really early in the morning, right?
Yeah. Y'all don't know, but he's called the White Buffalo. This boy can hoop.
Yeah, I like to give it a shot still. But I often think about that really early in the morning, especially before it gets to be light. Because what I used to do, because I think back to when I was in the depths of it, I would wake up before the light was up, and I would need a drink really bad, because you have to have a drink really quickly because there's nothing in you.
Right.
And I would know by the sound of the birds outside how many hours I had before it was daylight. So I would know how long before they started selling booze. And it was just this time of like itching and scratching and just shaking, I remember looking out across the street at the CVS, waiting for it to be 7. And mornings were the worst. And now I get up every morning and I'm able to open up my Bible, pray, kiss my kids,
Come on.
walk outside, go lift and play basketball, and be at my desk working before the sun comes up.
Yeah.
And it's just like the polar opposite of where it was. So to answer that question very succinctly, everything has changed.
Wow. Do you feel like there was a spiritual stronghold on your life? You have the mind, you have the body, you have the spirit, right? So you have this mental things going on, right? Trigger, stress, depression, mental wiring, neuroplasticity, things like that, right? Neurally and mentally in your mind that are tied to addiction. You have the flesh too. A body also gets used to things, right? So alcohol in the bloodstream, the body becomes acquainted with it. It starts to want it when it's gone, right? Like you go through withdrawal symptoms, things
100%.
physically happen. There's a physical, we cannot deny that's true, right? We've all experienced withdrawals from caffeine even. You stop drinking coffee, you get headaches, right? Because your body's used to high caffeine in the bloodstream and things like that in the gut. And then you have this spiritual component. And we are in a house that we advise you read the Bible, and we also talk about the Holy Spirit. We're not afraid to talk about demonic oppression and things like that. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there was a massive demonic stronghold on your life back when you were itching for alcohol beyond just mental and physical that was holding you there?
Yeah. It was to the point where, because I haven't seen it since, where I would see things that I wasn't supposed to see. And it all started, I've actually pinpointed when it started in my life. And it was in high school
Wow.
when it started. And it was,
Yeah, what triggered that?
well, because in high school I was like a young high school kind of basketball star, right? So I was starting varsity when I was a freshman. There were plans for me to go on to college, and it was in my late junior year when I started hanging around with a different kind of group of friends, and I would sneak out of my parents' house. We weren't drinking yet, right? Because we just didn't realize that you even could. And I would sneak to their house and we would play with the Ouija board. And we would sit there and there was like 5 of us, and we'd play till like 3, 4 in the morning. And we would do it every night, dude. Because we just thought it was a fun thing to do, right? Because the thing moves when you talk to it. And then there was one night when I went to sleep. After that, I got home, and my parents, we live in the middle of forest, so you hear gravel move, So I sleep above my parents' room, and my bedroom's above it on the next floor. And a door slams right outside my bedroom. Slams. And I wake up and I'm like, oh, and I yell downstairs, Mom, Dad, what was that? They're like, what are you talking about? Go to sleep. It's like, okay, maybe I was dreaming. I lay back down, and 20 seconds later, wham, and it was a bang on my door. And I get up, I turn all the lights on. I'm like, what's going on? And I walk downstairs, and my parents didn't hear anything. And I go with my dog outside to my dad's garage, which is another building, and there's a door open in there. And we're walking down, and about halfway to it, it got cold, and the dog ran away. And I went back inside. And from that moment, that next week is when I started drinking, when I started hanging, when I went on like a 20-year run of anything bad I could get into, I would get into it. And it was literally from that moment on, my life changed. And it was all because messing around with the Ouija board, 100%.
Dude, that speaks to me because I don't think people understand that there's spiritual warfare that is going on for our souls.
Yeah.
Like, there is heaven, there is hell. Lucifer took a third of the angels with him. There's a demonic army of demons that want to steal, kill, and destroy us.
Yeah.
And any foothold we give them in our life for them to come in, they will take.
Absolutely.
For you in this instance, the Ouija board opened up basically a doorway for demons to come into your life. That's why you had this crazy encounter that night. And I think people listen, it's like, I think to my childhood, dude, we played with Ouija boards. We did all kinds of crazy stuff. We did the thing in the mirror with the girl that you'd see, and like all kinds of weird stuff. And then we would have all these really weird, creepy things and nightmares and stuff that would happen in our life. And it's crazy because if you actually like look back, and if you like were to whiteboard out our lives and the timelines and things that happen, you would actually see synergy and coincidences from those moments when bad things start coming into our life. And for you, breaking free of that was at a Sunday service in San Diego. It's where it began, at least. I'm sure you had to walk a journey to really get that off of you, right? It doesn't, guys, I just want to say, and not that it can, but you're not going to just raise your hand at an altar call and go down and all of a sudden you're free, right, from alcohol addiction. You had to walk that out spiritually to get delivered, physically, right? You said it's a constant thing you still walk through because of the flesh and the mental. So I just think it's really cool, and I think it's cool you shared that to somebody who is struggling right now. Let's say alcoholism. It could be any addiction, though. What advice would you give to them to begin that journey? Or maybe they listen to you now are like, oh my God, I might have some demonic oppression on my life. There's some things, and ever since then, I feel like I've just been troubled in this area of my life. What would you say to that person?
It's okay to have the thoughts that are like, oh, I don't want to stop drinking because I just want to be normal. I just want to be normal. All relapses come from us just wanting to feel normal again. Go out with the crew and have some drinks. Think about where your life is now and ask yourself if it's normal. Okay? Getting help is where everything starts. The first step is just going and talking to someone. The hardest thing you'll ever do is just going into a meeting. That's the hardest thing. Ask any alcoholic. Harder than any withdrawal, harder than any hospital stay, harder than losing kids. The hardest thing is the first time you go in there and say, my name is so-and-so. I'm struggling with this. But when you release those words out of your mouth, that's when everything activates. God wants us to say things out loud. He wants it to activate. But you saying that out loud releases yourself. So if you think that you're struggling with something, if you think you're struggling with something, know that, hey, it's okay. It's okay to struggle with something. We're all different. We all struggle, right? All through the Bible, people struggle with different things. It's okay. And two, there's help for you out there. And God is always with you. Like, God is always with you. You're never alone. The biggest problem that we have in recovery is the same problem that we had in junior high kids church when I led there: isolation. Just don't be alone. Don't put yourself in a place of being alone, because then you think there's nowhere to go, and that's where the devil whispers at you.
Yeah.
But what happened? The Holy Spirit, the gift of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit is given to us so we're not alone. So just remember that you're not alone no matter what.
That's so good, man. Yeah. And I love that. And I think that, even me, I'll be vulnerable. When I was 25, I got a DUI. I'm 30 now. And I had to go through, so growing up, I started drinking at like 13.
Mm-hmm.
Partying was very much part of life. I felt like I got a lot of the partying and heavy drinking out of my system early. Like 13 to probably 20, it's kind of ironic because 21 is the actual drinking age, was my drinking years. 21, I was in real estate school, like to get my real estate license. I was focused. I was working. Like, I didn't care about drinking. I don't even think I really was drinking much at that period. But over time, come back and I'd go out and drink. And I always noticed, like, I'm kind of like obsessive about when I do things. So when I do something, I'm like all or nothing type of deal. So when I drank, usually I drink. And I'm also like, we'll get talking. And, you're at a bar and a bartender's like, do you want another one? Sure. And next thing you know, you got another full drink. And never thought much of it, though. I was always like, alcohol's not really my thing. I was a weed smoker. I was like, I'm more of a pothead back then. I was like, I'm not a big drinker. Like, that's not an issue for me. And out of all my friends, I thought at least I would be the least likely one to get a DUI. It's like, dude, I'm not that guy.
Yeah, sure.
And then how it happened, I took an ex-girlfriend on a trip up to the Upper Peninsula to hike waterfalls. We're staying in this beautiful cabin, and we drank this whole bottle of wine, and we're like, let's go get another one. And we went and got another one, and then it was like Halloween weekend, and they're having this like tavern Halloween party, and we stopped in there, and we were drinking there, and all these locals were doing shots. And then we went to drive home, and she fell asleep on me, and I fell asleep at the wheel, and my car went off into a tree line. And I woke up in the hospital. I was in the ER. And I haven't really told this story much, and it was one of the most devastating, traumatic moments in my life because I thought I killed my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I was just freaking out, like, where is she at? There's two state troopers in there basically writing me, like, a ticket for a DUI or whatever that is. They're like, you're drunk, you're intoxicated, you're like, you're lucky your girlfriend's alive, she's in the other room. I like pulled the IV out, like one in the other room, was still intoxicated. And that was a hard moment for my life because we got through that, but I'll never forget going to this guy you have to go see that like is determined if you have an issue with alcoholism. It's like part of the process. And I go to see this guy, and I'm like well put together. I'm in a suit. I have a great career. I'm building businesses. Like, my faith is getting like, and I'm just like, I haven't had an issue with this. Like, this was like, this was this crazy coincidence this happened. And I'm talking to this guy, and he starts going through my record, and I've had a really colorful past. My father was in prison. I ran away at 13. I moved out fully at 16. I was a drug dealer when I was a young kid, and I have all these things in my past that were brought to my attention with this man that I had to sit with. And he's like asking, do you think you have an issue with it? And, I'm basically denying it. And no, I don't, but I'm guilty. This is my fault. This is my responsibility. I take responsibility for my actions. Like, I'm not excusing that, but I don't feel that like alcoholism is an issue in my life. And he starts just going through these things of like, and it was more, he's like, well, you have a history of addiction.
Yeah.
You got arrested with marijuana when you're at this age. This thing happened at this age, this thing. And I was just like, it was really hard to like hear that stuff. And I was so like mad at this guy almost. And we got done, and it came back, and he said, basically my mom was an alcoholic. She really is too. And there's a history of alcoholism in my family and addiction. And he basically worded it in a way that I'm very prone to it.
Yeah.
That sat with me for so long. And then I finally had this revelation. I would always say, like, I don't have addictive personality, that maybe I do. And that's okay. And maybe this is something that is a problem in my life, and God needed to bring this in my life to expose this to me.
Yeah.
And I had these amazing godly men around me. The lead pastor, like the senior pastor of our church, was like a mentor to me. I was in a small group Bible study. One of the guys owned a law firm. The other guy was a Michigan State K-9 unit trooper. These guys were around me going through this. Like, you know, I had like a lead pastor, a cop, and an attorney, you know, and all of them, like, I went out to, and they spoke so much life into me and showed me, like, your life's not over because of this, but you get to decide now. Like, God's trying to reach you now. And I quit drinking for 3 years, a little over 3 years. I was out here. I didn't touch alcohol. I was like, God, this is not something that's good in my life. I release it. And then my now wife and I were in Valle de Guadalupe. I haven't drank for years. And the owner of the winery, I got to know him, and he comes this, that, and he's like, I want to give you and your wife for Valentine's Day, I want to gift you guys this bottle of wine. I'm like, oh, I don't drink. And he's like, are you really sure? And I had that moment of, well, if there's ever a time to break it, why not now?
Right.
You know, and I'm like, sure, I'll have a sip of some wine. You know, it's no big deal. But once you open that door again, I've learned, you naturally, then it was like the next weekend we were with some friends and they're like, Cody doesn't drink, and I'll take an IPA. Yeah. This, what? We've never seen, you know what I mean? And I started, and it's fine. And nothing like bad happened in the year I drank again. But I started like realizing, wow, I find myself wanting to do this again.
Pattern
I see the pattern start forming again. Had a little argument with my now wife one night. We never drank a lot. It'd be like one drink or something. But the fact that the argument happened, I was like, that only happens like that when that happens.
Yeah.
And I learned, for me, alcohol doesn't have a place in my life. But I'll tell you one last thing on here, riffing this, I'm being vulnerable. The true thing that really shifted it for me completely was John Soriano, who I'm an Emerge captain. And I took my Emerge captains to the night before we camp at Emerge, and we had this conversation. And John is, do you know who John Soriano is? He's starting to preach stuff.
I think he was on my first Emerge team way back, like 8 years ago.
Come on.
Yeah.
And he's a powerhouse and a great friend of mine. And John's been on an amazing journey of what God's done in his life.
Yeah.
And I admire him a lot. I have so much respect for him. And we're talking about alcohol, and he quit drinking as well. And he told me this story. He said, you know, Sunday, my first time I ever got asked to preach was at Bayho, and I was at that service. And he said, this guy in my life who's a really good friend. He's an atheist. He doesn't believe in Jesus. He doesn't believe in God. But I invited him to come watch me preach. And he said, John, they're good friends. He's like, yeah, I'll come to support you. But the guy doesn't believe in Jesus. And John's up on stage. John, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but I know it's going to inspire a lot of people. And he's sharing that this, basically, what if this guy didn't receive my message today and didn't accept Jesus into his life and get saved because he had a memory of drinking with him a year ago, more immature, not acting the best, and seeing him in a certain light? And what if this guy won't receive Jesus because now I'm the guy who's on the platform delivering the message, but he remembers me when I was doing that.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders, we're called to a higher standard. And I think the thing that helps me, if I'm just trying to do something for Cody, it's not enough, unfortunately. But when I take a mantle of who suffers if I don't show up, what person could I reach through this podcast, but because they saw me downtown on a Friday night acting like a heathen and a fool or drunk, they didn't receive something that could have changed their life because they were looking at me through that lens and that moment that I caved in. And that's the thing now, I don't drink, that has helped me carry like beyond those moments of like that guy.
That's beautiful. That's really powerful, dude. And that hits on a lot of things, you know, because none of us are perfect, right?
None of us.
Jesus was the only one. So we're all going to have things in the past, but we grow and we get smarter, right? So you having that awareness is going to help a lot of people, right? But you also knowing that is running in your family because it's a generational curse is what alcoholism is. And they say what walks in fathers runs in sons. to where like my father is a big drinker, and he's probably a functional alcoholic. I know he is, but it never affected anything. He's still just fine. And look, it ran in me. So what do? You cut that curse off.
Yeah,
And
it ends.
I mean, I got to tell you, that is the most amazing thing about being recovered, is that I have 2 kids that are never going to see dad drunk. They're never going to see. I got all that stuff was gone now, so they'll never have to see that, you know? And yeah, that's amazing that you had that, because here's the thing. Even when you were having one of the biggest things I would tell people, that if they think they might have a twinge of, do I have a problem with drugs or alcohol or any addiction is like cancer. It starts really, really, really small, but it grows and it spreads until it's uncontrollable. But like cancer, if you catch it fast, you can get rid of it.
You can cut it out.
So if you are out there and you're like, man, maybe I've had drinks a lot of nights in a row and it's affecting this relationship a little bit, but that's not me. That's for the other guys. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. Look into it more.
Yeah.
Because if you can still get rid of it. I specifically remember being in ad school outside one night on a cold Chicago night, having a martini outside of this bar, and I was like counting the nights in a row I drank, and I was like, is this too much? I remember that moment. I was like, nah, whatever, I'm fine. I'm from the country. I'm an American. I'm a man. It's fine. Another martini, with a side of cocaine. Let's go. Let's do this. But
the James Bond special.
You gotta listen to that, and that's really insightful that you do that, and because it's true, everything you said, right? You're a leader.
But
that
guy exposed me that it was a problem. I almost needed that. I was in denial.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I take this, what we do, which you're about to record an episode with me on podcasts. I take this serious.
Mm-hmm.
We're influencing people. And even though anyone can post content on social media or start a podcast and build influence, for me at least, the stewardship and the responsibility of the mantle of influence on another human's life is I must live out of integrity. And now I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm not perfect. I fall short of the mark plenty, guys, and I do my best to be vulnerable and talk about my ish on this podcast with people like I just did. But nonetheless, there's a higher standard you and I are called to. If we were going to step on, if we were going to grab the microphone, if we're going to tell someone else and inspire them to live a better life, that needs to be a responsibility.
100%.
We worship, not like I don't, and you, like, idolatry is a very bad thing. You shouldn't. But people worship famous, successful people and their way of life, and they don't realize that they bring in things that those people do that they immediately say are okay because so-and-so does it, that attaches into your life. Drinking's one of them. Drugs, sex, and alcohol have been sold to us through marketing for so long that's become a way of life, and so many people struggle with it.
Yeah, it is. And another thing about what you just said goes back to what you just told us, and it was hard, but it was vulnerable, right? And you said it. Going back to here being authentic, there's someone out there that has that exact same situation you're in, and they're gonna be like, "Nah, it's not a big deal," and they're gonna hear you say that, and they're like, okay, now it's something I should think about, right? Everything that we release like that authentically is that's someone else's story or someone else's spot in their journey they're in right now.
They might catch that. And guys, and I think we're way over time, but getting people around you to speak into your life, I think is a big thing. If you do wonder if alcohol is a problem, and this is kind of hard, but if you have people in your life that you allow to speak into you and sharpen you in that area, ask people close to you. Mm-hmm. Hey, I know this is kind of weird, but do you feel like I have a problem with alcohol? You might not like what you hear back, but just that alone and opening that space and getting feedback from people around us, because I sometimes think we create this identity of ourselves in our head that's often a lie.
Yeah.
This perception of who we are, how great we are, even how good we look and different things we do. But with things like that are bad in our life, I don't have a problem with drinking. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with pornography. You create this identity that's not always true. And sometimes you got to expose the realness of who you are to change who you are.
Well, and sometimes too, those people that you're asking have seen it way before you did.
And they're like, bro, you definitely, right? You have that one homeboy that's just no filter, like, yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Let them speak into you. Mm-hmm. And then it's, I mean, also getting around people you can trust with that. Because if you ask somebody who's also struggling with that, they also unfortunately don't want to see you rise from that. They want to pull you back down like crabs in a bucket. You ever heard about that? Mm-hmm. Throw crabs in a bucket, none of them will get out because the moment one starts crawling out, they pull it back down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a true thing. You don't have to put a lid on a bucket full of crabs. They will never let a crab leave the bucket.
Wow.
And the same thing will happen when you're trying to break addiction and alcoholism in your life. I went through this. I had to remove myself from the bucket because every time I tried breaking free of that, people made me feel bad about not wanting to drink. Like there was such a struggle for me to fully go through that transition because I drank even a little after my DUI when I was trying so hard to break it because the people around me were like, you're fine, we'll drive tonight. Like just the dumbest stuff to pull me back down into the bucket.
Yeah.
And I finally realized like these aren't real friends. I got to get out of here.
You got to prune.
Yeah.
And you know, you might have to get yourself out of the bucket too. You know what I mean? Because like that's why we die to ourselves, because a lot of times it's you in your head saying, no, I'm better. I can beat this. I'm very strong.
Yeah.
You know, and we're our worst critic. You know, like they say, if you don't talk nice to yourself, you're not going to talk nice to anyone else. We have to kill our old selves and get out of that and be like, that's why the first step is I surrender and admit that I am powerless. You got to be like, I can't do it without you, God. I can't. I got to lay it down here. Now help me. You know, we got to get ourselves out of that bucket too.
Yeah. Well, Bill, as we wrap up here, man, I'd love to do two things. One, how can people connect with you and get plugged in with you? Let's start there.
Okay, great. Yeah. The Power of Prayer podcast is on YouTube and all the channels like Spotify, Apple, and all that stuff. So that's under the Power of Prayer podcast. And I think if you look up Kingdom Come, you'll find it as well. Kingdom Come is my faith-based apparel company. It's our mission to spread prayer, which is the same as the podcast.
Are you wearing one of the shirts?
Yeah. We just have this one made now.
Let's go.
The back says, part-time faith can't beat a full-time devil.
Come on.
One of the Eastlake youth pastors said that once, and it stuck with me. And I'm like, that's going to be a shirt, bro.
I need to get one.
Yeah, we'll get you one for sure. The website for that is praykingdomcome.com.
Okay.
Most important part of that is there's a prayer request area there, and we're really good about reaching out to you if you need a prayer request. So if anybody that needs help, healing, a prayer, anything, just go there. It's the second module on the site. Hit us up. And then I guess buffalowarchild.com if you need any advertising services.
Go.
Or Eastlake Campus at 9 a.m.
Come on, baby. Fly out to San Diego. Come attend a service with Bill.
Oh, and the recovery meetings are Monday nights at 7 o'clock at the Eastlake campus.
Let's go. I love that. Bill, will you pray us out?
100%. God, Father, thank you so much for being with us in this room today. Thank you so much for letting us feel you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the healing that you're just doing to anyone that needs it. Thank you for the entertainment that you're giving anyone that needs it. Thank you for just the sound of someone that's alone in a room somewhere that just needs something to distract them from their own head for a little bit of moment. Thank you for letting us be that sound, God. May this reach everyone. Everyone that needs it, and let them hear it in their own ways. God, thank you for Cody. Thank you for his podcast. Let it just reach all around the world and act as a magnet to bring anyone that needs comfort, joy, healing, hope, inspiration, knowledge. Let it just be a magnet to bring it not only closer to him, but closer to God through him. Lord, let him continue to be an open vessel that is just wide open to get downloads from you, to say it out of his mouth in a way that only he can. God, thank you for his family. Thank you for his church. Thank you for our church. And God, thank you for loving us so much. And we pray this in your almighty name. Amen.
Amen. So good, man. It was an honor to have you on the show, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cody.
Go listen to his podcast because he's about to interview me.
Yeah, that's right.
Boom.
Thanks, guys.